"You're unbelievable, Clara," my sister Sophia snapped, her voice slicing through the murmur of the ocean waves beyond the restaurant's open terrace. Her fork clattered onto her plate, the sound sharp against the clink of glasses and soft chatter around us. She crossed her arms, her glare pinning me like a spotlight. "You just had to ruin everything, didn't you?" I froze, my fingers tightening around the stem of my water glass. The table fell silent. My parents' voices, fading, the other diners' conversations dimming as if the world had narrowed to this moment. My father exhaled heavily, a weary sound that carried years of frustration. My mother's lips pressed into a familiar thin line, her attempt at neutrality betrayed by the subtle tilt of her head toward Sophia. I stared at my plate, the grilled, mahi-mahi now tasteless, my appetite smothered by the weight of their judgment. My name is Clara Mitchell. I'm 36. And for as long as I can remember, I've been the family's scapegoat. Every misstep, every hiccup, every storm cloud on the horizon. Somehow, it's always my fault. And Sophia? She's the golden child, effortlessly charming, always emerging from chaos with her halo intact. The tension wrapped around us like a fog, thick and unyielding. I should have seen this moment coming. Sophia's knack for turning any mishap into my personal failure was as predictable as the tides. Yet, each time I hoped for better, clinging to the naive belief that this time, things might be different. This particular explosion had been brewing since we arrived at the coastal resort for what was supposed to be a restorative family vacation. I'd taken charge of planning, a rare chance to prove I could handle things, booking the resort, securing dinner reservations, and arranging activities. I'd poured hours into it, cross-referencing reviews, confirming details, ensuring everything was perfect. But perfection, it seemed, was no match for Sophia's narrative. It started 2 days ago, at the resort's upscale seafood restaurant. We arrived for our first dinner, dressed in our vacation best, only to be told our reservation didn't exist. My mother turned to me, her eyes narrowing. "Clara, you said you handled this." "I did," I stammered, fumbling for my phone to show the confirmation email. "Look, it's right here. I booked it weeks ago." "Then why are we standing here with no table?" Sophia chimed in, her tone laced with mockery. "Nice work, Clara." The hostess was apologetic but firm. The reservation had been canceled, and the restaurant was fully booked. We ended up at a nearby diner, eating greasy burgers under flickering fluorescent lights, a far cry from the elegant dining experience I'd planned. Sophia sighed dramatically throughout the meal, casting pointed glances my way, muttering about how this was why she never trusted me with important tasks. My parents said nothing, their silence a tacit agreement that I'd failed. The next morning brought another blow. Sophia had organized a single activity, a snorkeling trip, her sole contribution to the trip. When we arrived at the dock, the guide informed us the boat was delayed due to engine trouble. It was no one's fault, a mechanical fluke. But Sophia seized the moment. "Another Clara classic," she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. I wanted to scream. It wasn't my responsibility, but years of biting my tongue kept me quiet. Arguing never worked. It only made me look defensive, feeding Sophia's narrative. My mother laughed lightly at one of Sophia's jabs, suggesting, "We work on our teamwork," as if this was a shared failure. I swallowed the sting, blinking back tears, refusing to let them fall. Now, at this candlelit dinner on our third night, Sophia had escalated her campaign, publicly declaring me the architect of the vacation's ruin. She leaned forward, her voice rising theatrically as she listed every mishap, twisting each into evidence of my incompetence. First, Clara botches the dinner reservation because she can't handle a simple booking, she said, ticking off, her fingers. Then the snorkeling trip falls apart, probably because she didn't bother to check the details. Honestly, why do we even let her try? That's enough, Sophia, I said, my voice low but trembling. I felt my father's gaze, heavy and expectant, but he stayed silent. My mother looked at me, her expression suggesting I should apologize and defuse the situation. Sophia smirked, clearly reveling in the spotlight. "Oh, come on," she continued, her tone syrupy. "Don't get defensive, Clara. I'm just stating facts. Someone has to." My fingers gripped the tablecloth, the anger I'd suppressed for years surging like a tidal wave. I'd spent my life absorbing these attacks, convincing myself it wasn't worth the fight, that keeping the peace was better than rocking the boat. But tonight, something snapped. Sophia's words weren't just an accusation. They were a verdict, one my family had endorsed for too long. The silence after Sophia's outburst was deafening. My father leaned back, rubbing his temples as if the scene were a migraine he couldn't shake. My mother busied herself with her napkin, avoiding my eyes, her default move when she wanted to sidestep conflict. "I don't understand why this has to be so complicated," she said finally, her voice heavy with exasperation. "Clara, you know how much these trips mean to us. Why didn't you double-check everything?" "I did," I snapped, the sharpness in my voice startling even me. All eyes turned to me, surprise flickering across their faces. "I checked everything, twice. The dinner, the activities, all of it. I don't know why things went wrong, but it wasn't because I didn't try." Sophia let out a dramatic sigh, pushing her chair back. "Clearly, it wasn't enough," she said, standing. "I'm going for a walk. Maybe someone else can figure out how to save this trip." She strode off, leaving an awkward void in her wake. My father glanced at my mother, who shook her head as if to say, "Let it go." But I couldn't let it go. Not this time. That night, I lay awake in my hotel room, the ceiling fan's hum doing little to drown out Sophia's words echoing in my mind. You just had to ruin everything. It wasn't just her accusations that stung. It was my parents' complicity, their willingness to let her paint me as the villain without question. My mother's subtle blame, my father's passive silence. It was a pattern I'd lived with for decades. Sophia had always been the charismatic one, her charm a shield that deflected accountability. My mother called it sparkle. I called it manipulation. But it was the kind of manipulation you learn to endure when you're the family's designated fall guy. I thought about calling my best friend Natalie, who'd been my confidant since college. She'd always been quick to remind me that I wasn't the problem, that my family's dynamic was unfair. But it was past midnight, and I didn't want to burden her. Instead, I grabbed my phone, scrolling aimlessly through messages to distract myself. That's when I saw it, a text thread from Sophia, buried in our chat from 3 weeks ago. "Hey, Clara, can you double-check the snorkeling booking? I'm swamped and might have screwed it up. Also, I think I accidentally canceled the, dinner reservation. Can you fix it?" My breath caught. I scrolled further, rereading each message. The words were unmistakable. Sophia had admitted to botching the plans, then conveniently forgotten her role when it came time to point fingers. In the chaos of the trip, I'd overlooked these messages, too caught up in trying to salvage everything. But now, they were a lifeline, proof that I wasn't the failure she'd made me out to be. The next morning, breakfast was a strained affair. My mother tried to lighten the mood with chatter about the resort's amenities, while Sophia scrolled through her phone, ignoring everyone. My father sipped his coffee, his silence louder than any words. I kept glancing at him, hoping for a sign he'd address last night's blow-up, but he offered nothing. I excused myself early, heading to the beach to clear my head. I texted Natalie, asking for a quick call. She answered immediately, her voice warm and steady. "Clara, you sound off. What's going on?" I poured out the story, the ruined reservations, Sophia's accusations, my parents' inaction. By the time I finished, I was pacing the shoreline, the sand cool beneath my feet. "I'm so tired of this, Nat," I said, my voice breaking. "They always take her side no matter what." "Oh, Clara," Natalie said, her tone fierce. "You don't deserve this. Why are you letting Sophia get away with it?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I keep thinking if I stay quiet, it'll blow over, but it never does." "Do you have proof she's wrong?" Natalie asked. "Anything to shut this down?" I hesitated, the text thread flashing in my mind. "Actually, I do," I said, explaining the messages. I read them aloud, my voice growing steadier with each word. Natalie let out a low whistle. "Clara, that's gold. You have to show them. This is your chance to set the record straight." "I don't know," I said, chewing my lip. "What if it makes things worse? What if they think I'm just stirring up drama?" "Worse than what?" Natalie countered. "Letting Sophia walk all over you while your parents nod along? You've been carrying their blame for years. Don't you think it's time to stop?" Her words hit like a wave, stirring something deep within me. She was right. I'd spent my life absorbing the family's frustrations, convincing myself it was easier to stay silent. But silence hadn't protected me. It had only deepened the wounds. I thanked Natalie, promising to think it over, but her challenge lingered. "You deserve to have your side heard." The day passed in a blur. My mother suggested a group outing to the nearby marina, and my father seemed eager to avoid any serious discussion, so I went along, pretending to enjoy the boat tour while my mind churned. The screenshots on my phone felt like a ticking bomb, comforting in their truth, terrifying in their potential to upend everything. By evening, as we prepared for dinner, I'd made my decision. I couldn't keep letting Sophia rewrite my story. If she wanted to cast me as the villain, she'd have to do it in the face of evidence. The restaurant was breathtaking. Its open air, terrace framed by twinkling lights and a panoramic view of the ocean, the water shimmering under the setting sun. A soft jazz melody wove through the air, mingling with the clink of cutlery and the hum of conversation. But at our table, the atmosphere was frigid. I sat quietly, pushing a piece of roasted snapper around my plate, while my mother filled the silence with forced cheer about the resort spa. My father nodded absently, his attention on his wine. Sophia, as always, commanded the spotlight, regaling our parents with a story about a work colleague that had them chuckling. Then, as the server cleared our entrees, Sophia turned to me with a smirk. "So, Clara, what's your plan for tanking? Tomorrow's schedule? Or are we just rolling with the chaos now?" My fork slipped, clattering loudly against my plate. The sound drew glances from nearby tables, but I barely noticed. My face burned, the anger I'd held back for years surging to the surface. "That's enough, Sophia," I said, my voice low but steady. She laughed, tilting her head as if amused. "Oh, relax, Clara. It's just a joke." "No, it's not," I shot back, my hands trembling as I pushed my plate aside. "You've been blaming me for every single thing that's gone wrong on this trip, and I'm done letting you get away with it." The table fell silent. My mother's hand froze midair, her wine glass hovering. My father cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. Sophia leaned back, crossing her arms, her smirk faltering, but quickly replaced by mock innocence. "Wow, Clara. Dramatic much? I'm just pointing out the obvious. Don't play the victim." I took a deep breath, my heart pounding so fiercely I thought it might burst. "I'm not the victim," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I'm just telling the truth. And since you seem to struggle with that, let me help you." I pulled my phone from my purse, my fingers steady despite the adrenaline. Opening the text thread, I placed the phone on the table, screen up. "Do you recognize these, Sophia? You sent them 3 weeks ago." Her eyes flicked to the phone, her smirk vanishing. "What are you talking about?" she said, reaching for it, but her voice carried a hint of unease. My mother leaned forward, squinting at the screen. "Clara, what's this?" "It's proof," I said, tapping the screen to highlight the messages. Sophia canceled the dinner reservation. She admitted it right here. And the snorkeling trip? She asked me to fix her mistake, then blamed me when it fell apart. She's been lying to you, making it look like I'm the one who can't get it right. My father reached for the phone, his brow furrowing as he read. "Sophia," he said slowly, his voice low. "Is this true?" Sophia's face flushed, her eyes darting between our parents. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her usual composure cracking. "Dad, come on," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not like that. Texts can be misinterpreted. I was stressed, okay? I didn't mean to blame Clara." "Misinterpreted?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You've spent this entire trip calling me incompetent, making me feel like I ruined everything. And now it's a misunderstanding?" "Girls," my mother interjected, raising her hands. "Let's not turn this into a scene." "It's not a scene," I said, my gaze locked on Sophia. "It's the truth. For once, I'm not letting her twist the story to make herself look good." Sophia's smile wavered, her eyes flicking to my father for rescue. "I didn't mean to make things worse," she said, her voice softening, a classic move to garner sympathy. "I was stressed, and I said things I shouldn't have. I'm sorry, Clara." My father set the phone down, his expression unreadable. He looked at me, then at Sophia, and finally at my mother. "Ellen," he said quietly, "I think we've been ignoring something for too long." My mother's brow creased. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he continued, his voice steady but heavy. "Clara's been taking the fall for things she didn't do, maybe for years. We've let it happen because it was easier than facing the truth." The words hung in the air, a rare acknowledgement that left me breathless. My mother opened her mouth to respond, but hesitated, her gaze settling on me with a flicker of something new, regret perhaps. "Clara," she said softly, "why didn't you say something sooner?" I let out a bitter laugh, the sound raw. Would it have mattered? Every time I've tried to defend myself, you've brushed it off or taken Sophia's side. Why would this time be different? Her expression faltered, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her usual composure. She reached across the table, her hand resting lightly on mine. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't realize how much we've been hurting you." The apology, though small, carried a weight I hadn't expected. Sophia shifted in her seat, her eyes darting between our parents and me. "Look," she said, her voice quieter, "I didn't mean for this to spiral. I messed up, okay? I'm sorry, Clara." I studied her, searching for sincerity. Her usual bravado was gone, replaced by a tiredness that suggested she meant it, at least in this moment. But I wasn't looking for her validation anymore. I'd laid the truth bare, and that was enough. The walk back to the hotel was quiet, the ocean's rhythm filling the space where words failed. My father walked beside me, hands in his pockets, while my mother and Sophia trailed behind, their murmured conversation barely audible. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the family's anchor, weighed down by their expectations. But the relief was tinged with exhaustion. Speaking up had been liberating, but it had also taken a toll. On the hotel balcony later that night, my father asked me to join him. The moon cast a silver glow over the water, but my mind was too restless to take it in. "Clara," he began, his voice softer than I'd heard in years, "I owe you an apology." I turned to him, surprised. My father wasn't one for introspection, preferring to let conflicts fade rather than address them. For what? I asked, cautious. For not seeing it, he said, his gaze fixed on the horizon. You've been carrying more than your share for a long time, and I didn't step in. I'm sorry. His sincerity caught me off guard. I nodded, swallowing hard. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. He placed a hand on my shoulder, a rare gesture. You've always been the one keeping us steady. We've leaned on you too much. I can't promise we'll fix everything overnight, but I'll try. Later, my mother found me in my room, her expression hesitant. She sat on the edge of my bed, twisting a bracelet around her wrist. I wanted to talk about tonight, she said, her voice soft. Your father's right. We haven't been fair, to you. I think I knew it, deep down, but it was easier to let things slide, especially with Sophia's energy. I gave a small, humorless laugh. She's good at that. My mother smiled faintly. I see you, Clara. I see how much you've done for us, how much you've sacrificed. I'm sorry if we made you feel like it wasn't enough. Her words, though overdue, brought a quiet sense of closure. I nodded, my voice steady. Thank you, Mom. Sophia was subdued the next morning, her usual chatter replaced by a reserved silence. As we packed to leave, she approached me in the hallway, her arms crossed tightly. Hey, she said, her voice low. About last night. I know I messed up. I'm sorry, Clara. I shouldn't have thrown you under the bus. I studied her, looking for the usual deflection, but saw only fatigue. It's not just last night, I said carefully. It's a pattern, Sophia. It can't keep happening. She nodded, her eyes dropping to the floor. I get it. I'll try to do better. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was a start. I didn't need her to change overnight. I just needed her to know I wouldn't stay silent anymore. The weeks after the trip felt different, subtle, but tangible. Sophia texted me occasionally, small updates about her life, a funny video, as if testing new ground. My parents called more, asking about my work as a graphic designer and listening when I shared my latest projects. It wasn't a complete overhaul. Old habits linger, but it felt like a shift, a step toward balance. The biggest change was in me. Speaking up at that dinner had been terrifying, but it had also been empowering. I'd spent years giving my family the power to define me, accepting their blame to keep the peace. But that night, I'd reclaimed my voice, and I wasn't letting it go. At work, I noticed the shift too. I started setting boundaries, saying no to extra tasks, advocating for my ideas in meetings, taking credit for my designs instead of letting colleagues overshadow me. My creative director noticed, my team noticed, and slowly I did too. Over coffee with Natalie one weekend, she raised her cup in a mock toast. To the new Clara, she said, grinning. A force to be reckoned with. I laughed, clinking my cup against hers. I'm not sure about force, but I'm getting there. You're already there, she said firmly, and it's about time. My family was still a work in progress. Sophia and I weren't suddenly inseparable, but our conversations felt less like minefields. My mother still slipped into old habits, like asking me to organize a holiday gathering, but I held firm. I'll help, I told her, but Sophia can take the lead this time. She paused, then nodded. Fair enough, she said, and another weight lifted. One evening, as I sat on my apartment's balcony, the city lights twinkling below, I reflected on the journey. The girl who'd once swallowed her voice to keep the peace was gone. I was someone who spoke her truth, who set boundaries, who knew her value, and I didn't need anyone else to confirm it. The sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. Not because my family had changed, but because I had.